Women make up only about 14 to 15% of the global construction workforce, and in roles like site operations, that number can be even lower. In architecture, around 30% of professionals are women, though fewer hold senior leadership positions. Engineering shows a similar story, with women representing just 15 to 20% of the workforce worldwide. Many women leave these industries due to workplace culture challenges and a lack of support. On a recent episode of the Smarter Building podcast, we spoke with Mairead Gallagher-Morgan from Grimshaw about the importance of workforce wellbeing, inclusion and mentoring in architecture, engineering and construction. Today, we're continuing that important conversation with Amanda, who is the founder of Awesome Women in Construction in Australia, or AWIC, a non-profit organisation that supports women working in the construction industry. So, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be here.
And I appreciate the time difference. It's 8 p.m. over there in Australia, isn't it?
It is indeed, yes.
Love the dedication. Thank you. So, could you just tell us a little bit about AWIC for those of our listeners who might not actually know?
Yeah, sure. So Awesome Women in Construction, I have 25 years experience in residential construction as a procurement and estimating specialist, and I was just missing a connection, right? I've worked with incredible male bosses, building managers, site supervisors, drafting managers and everybody in between, but I was still missing a connection. So one March, when I came back from the Christmas break, I sent out some emails and next minute 14 ladies are coming to our breakfast for no other reason than to connect and support each other. 3 months later, we had 48 ladies at a breakfast for exactly the same reason, and I knew I had tapped into something special.
So what exactly are these sort of initiatives that you do run at AWIC?
Yeah, so a lot of it is, the biggest one I'm going to say is connection, right? Sometimes, we just want to know that what we're feeling or what we're thinking or what has happened in the workplace, we're not over-exaggerating it, right? It could be the fact that we've been overlooked for a role. It could be a joke that we've heard that maybe tomorrow or yesterday we would have let it go through to the keeper, but today it's just annoying us for some reason, right? And to have that community of women who unfortunately have either been in that position, had that experience, or are experiencing it. And we can all just share our lessons, I guess, from those sorts of situations. So connection is a big one. The other initiatives we're doing is a lot of work and roadshows, which we're about to head on to engage and empower our next generation of school leavers into the construction industry, and showcasing more than, when someone talks about construction, they hear about, or they identify straight away with carpenters and plumbers and electricians. I like to say it's not all dirty trucks and tool belts, right? There's a whole other gamut of roles that, are waiting for someone to take control of, or to even, the biggest part is that our students and our educators don't even know that some of these roles exist.
Yeah. And I think, as going back to one of your points, as one of the few women in the room at times, being in a technology-based construction company, and also coming from a marketing background, there can sometimes be a bit of stigma around that, I would say. So I think I know how valuable networking events, and as you've just touched on, mentoring can be for building confidence and connection. So how exactly do you guys help facilitate some of these mentoring and networking events?
Yeah, so we have regular networking events. They're on our website. We've got one coming up this week, which is a breakfast event, and we try and keep them simple and affordable because everybody's in, different levels of finance and all those things. So, we book a couple of tables and people come, and if they want to have the full on, buffet breakfast, they can go for it. If they just want to come and have coffee and a banana bread, well, then they're welcome to do that too, right? So they can come, and there's no judgment or any of those sorts of things. And it's purely about putting like-minded women in the room, and men. It's great to see some of the men are starting to attend our events. And, if it wasn't for the gentlemen in over my 25 years, I wouldn't be in the roles that I am now. I wouldn't have had the support and the mentoring, as you said. And then, we have we don't have an official mentoring program, but if somebody calls and says, hey, I'm a fourth year carpenter, do you know anybody that you can connect me with? The answer is yes, right? And whether that's a carpenter, an engineer, an environmentalist, an accountant, the most incredible thing about AWIC is the expansion and the amount of incredible women that are in it. And everybody is happy to give some of their time to make sure that we keep propping each other up.
So how are sort of some of the male allies in the industry? How are they supporting, and what more can they actually do to contribute to this equality in construction?
Yeah, look, for me, it's getting back to some of our grassroots. I had a conversation with a gentleman at a breakfast just last week, and he said as much as they want to have women in their organisation, they can't even get them to apply for the jobs that they advertise. And I just suggested to him, not having seen his website or his roles that are advertised, but have a look at the language we're using. Have a look at his website. If he's got lots of images that are masculine, and don't even have to be males in the photos, but masculine images, masculine wording on his website in his position descriptions, that's going to deter women from applying for those roles, right? Yeah. And you could just see the light bulb moment. He went, oh yeah, let's have a look at that first. So it can come back to, I'll say some simple things, but changing that language and shifting that direction can take time.
Yeah, and I guess as you said, it's even just acknowledging that is one of the first steps. So that's a great start. And I think, as you said, one of your major outreach programs is the roadshow snapshot, which has engaged thousands of students. So how do you actually put something together, and how does it help inspire young women to explore more careers in construction?
Yeah, so the biggest activity within it is getting them out of the school environment and immersing them into the construction industry. So when I say construction, it could be manufacturing, the two go hand in hand, right? You can't have one without the other. So I mentioned before, we're about to head on a roadshow. So the first week we'll be in Rockhampton. So we'll be taking high school students, generally grades 10 through to 12, out on these site tours. So whether it's brickworks factories, making a brick is not dissimilar to making a cake. You need to have the right recipe, you need to have the right ingredients, you need to have all of those, the kilns or / the oven at the right temperature to make the right product. And when we explain it to the students, that's a very simple way to do it. But when we show them all the aspects, they start to go, oh yeah. So those sorts of roles, we need, chemists, we need, health and safety, we need, engineers, we need all those sorts of roles, right, that they may not have thought about. And if they did, they may not have thought about it in that context.
So how do you onboard some of these partners to help with the initiatives that you're running?
We ask the question. It's as simple as that, right? I mean, having been in the industry for 25 years, there's a lot of people in my phone, in my, once upon a time we'd have called it all sorts of things. But yeah, look, it's simply asking the question. And once we've, this is our third year of doing the roadshow, so a lot of the businesses are repeat. They enjoy us coming as much as, the students do. And, I'm very grateful that the businesses we go to, whether it's Brickworks or Lysart or any of them, they're very conscious of the safety. So it's full PPE. We give the students a mini toolbox talk before we get off the bus and explain to them the situation. But these massive organisations generally will pause production in their factories for that hour and a half that we're there. Or they will have it running for the first 30 minutes so that the students can get a real sense of the sound and the noise and the, vibration in the factory. And then they shut it down for an hour. Now, that's a huge expense, right? Shutting down a plant like that for an hour and a half, just to showcase this to the students what the opportunities are. So I'm incredibly grateful.
And that's quite young, really, isn't it? You say between 10 and 12. So it goes to one of my questions here, actually. So at Symmetry, we're also doing a few initiatives to help encourage young people, specifically women, into the industry. So we're sponsoring hopefully an engineering student and a structural engineering student's tuition fees, because we spoke with the university there and they said, we're not we're not struggling to get people onto the course, it's actually them going out into the field and getting that experience. So how early do you think people should be starting to get experience, and how do you also actually get people on that at that young as you are?
Look, for me, we start buying our nieces and nephews Tonka trucks when they're 2 and 3, right, to play in the sandpit. And we're getting there. Pink isn't just for girls anymore, and blue isn't just for boys. So we are seeing a change. And look, I would love us to start to be talking to, I'll say late primary school students where, society hasn't quite yet started to give them a hard time about what they're going to do when they grow up. But going into schools and, it's one of the reasons why I've created a children's, or started to create a children's book series, going in and just planting that seed and letting them know what's available. But also taking in industry, whether it's other women or gentlemen from industry, and, making it fun, engaging and interactive, because that's when they go home and go, hey, Mum and Dad, guess what I did today? You never know what's going to happen with the seeds you plant, and the sooner we can start to plant those, the better.
And I guess in the world of today, like, that children's book sounds amazing, but then we've got all the kids now, they're into Minecraft, Fortnite, how can we maybe even get stuff onto all of the apps that they're using these days? That would be
It's very
amazing.
different, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very different.
So just going back to yourself a little bit, it's quite a big move leaving the industry that you were doing to start your own business, let alone a kind of non-profit. How has that journey been for you, and what advice could you offer to anyone else considering a similar leap?
Yeah, look, leaving that security of full-time employment and having your I have a sole trading business. So I consulted to industry, whether it was small businesses, franchises, large national, international businesses, and that's gave me the flexibility to focus or at least give AWIC a little bit more attention, right? It was growing very organically, and at the end of 2019, I just decided to see what would happen if I could spend a little bit more time on it, and it's absolutely exploded. But, look, I think, it's the old mantra when they say do a job that you love, you don't work a day in your life. I think there's a lot of that in there. It is long hours, it is sacrifice, it is all of those things. But for me, what makes it worthwhile is when you hear those stories of, I'll call them success, right? Young ladies, they may have, on a roadshow or in an activity we've done, had a chance to use some of their augmented welding. It's a bit virtual reality, a little bit tech, and they love it, right? And they're getting 94, 95 out of 100 the very first time they pick it up. When they start to think about becoming a boilermaker as a career pathway, and then you find out a few months later they're doing a school-based apprenticeship as a boilermaker, that's the cool stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or having a young student, reach out wanting some work experience, and then later on finding out that they stayed with that person who gave them that opportunity, and they're now working with them. But even just seeing the growth in the women that have been part of AWIC since its inception, they're not putting up with toxic workplaces anymore. Some of the ladies are leaving workplaces where they have been for 15, 16, 17 years because not the business has changed, but they have changed, and they're just not putting up with it anymore. And I couldn't be prouder of that.
No, it must be very, very rewarding, and to know that it's actually contributing to people's lives in the end. So it's a hats off to you. It's very hard to do. And I think you being a woman yourself as well, again, it's kind of inspirational to see. So I guess we could kind of class you as a bit of a leader. So how, again, that's something that I personally myself have struggled with, but also I think we've seen in the industry, we don't see as many women in construction in leadership positions. Sorry. So what more could we be doing to help encourage them into those sorts of positions?
Look, I think first we've got to, as an industry, and some businesses are doing it very well and others just refuse to, is we have to have better opportunities and programs for women when they return to work after having their family. And whether it's, returning to work after having their family or returning to work after looking after aging parents, it doesn't matter what it is, right? We, as an industry, generally don't like the word flexibility, or, job sharing roles. I think if we don't start to change our old school mentality, then we are never going to see an increase in women in C-suite middle management roles, right? Because the door is just shut on them. It's full time or not at all, and they take the not at all option, or they go and find somewhere that will take them on as a casual employee, and that's really disheartening.
Yeah, where do you often see in cases where that has happened? Like where do they often tend to go? Is it more like a admin role, or yeah, where have you kind of seen it yourself?
Yeah, look, whether it's an admin role or they will just find an employer that will take them on a casual basis or part-time basis, or someone that will give them, hours during school timeframes. For what I have seen, and I guess it's a message, to any of the industry listening, if you employ a mother, if she can get 3 kids under 5 out of that front door by 7 a.m., she's got some decent transferable skills, right? If she can negotiate with a 3-year-old at 6 a.m., if she can have breakfast, have them dressed, have the school bags packed and out the door, I would employ them in a heartbeat, right? And they're hard workers, right? Yeah, because they know they've got, 5 or 6 hours to get 8 hours of work done, and they do it. They're absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, that is such a good point when you put it like that.
Yeah, yeah. You can negotiate with a 3-year-old. I think you can go with anyone, right? Yeah.
So how have you sort of grown? I see that you've growing in Australia. What does this expansion mean for your mission? So has that grown, and are there plans beyond Australia perhaps?
Yeah, look, world domination, right? Hashtag world domination. Let's get it out there. And look, a lot of it is collaboration. We can't do it on our own. I often talk about how we help someone in our own backyard. It's that ripple effect, right? Like dropping a pebble into water. A lot of the relationships I've built has been because of networking, or over a couple of years, we've been at the same events and we go, hang on a second, we're all trying to do the same thing, and I like to explain it that we're all in an Olympic swimming pool, right? We might be all in our own lane, but we're all heading towards that one same goal. And collaboration's key. If we can keep helping each other, we support organisations throughout Australia, they support us. We are all doing the same but different. AWIC doesn't just focus on trades, but other organisations that we support do. And that's okay, because if we all just help each other, then it's a much easier journey. And sometimes you just need to be able to call someone and go, this is what I'm coping with today. Am I losing my mind? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, no, I was like that last week, or I'm in exactly the same space as you. And it's okay, right?
So we actually have a group in the UK. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. They're called Women in BIM. So again, they sort of run similar events. They run sort of networking evening drinks, or they also have like a mentorship program. So I know a couple of the people there that are mentors. And it's just exactly for that reason, as you said, just to have somebody to call to say like, I've got this issue. Can I get some advice? So do you ever find that you collaborate with any similar organizations like that from other countries?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working with this one's for the gals in Texas, USA. We're doing some partnerships in that aspect. The more we can do, the better, right? And for me, it's about bridging those gaps, not just in Australia, but across the world. And, we're all, it's not all unicorns and roses every day, right? And, some countries are further ahead in that, diversity and inclusion. I don't want to call it a fight, but that progression, right? Other companies are further behind. And if we can at least share our wins and share how we have done things, whether it's AWIC in Australia or this one's for the gals in Texas or BIM in London, then we can be bigger, stronger and smarter. And it's, we can make more noise if we work together.
Now, I've often heard here in the UK, for example, that I kind of don't want to be part of that group, for instance, because I feel like me bringing an issue, not an issue, but me actually saying I'm going to be part of this group, it's only women, is that kind of adding to the problem? How do you deal with any feedback like that? Why do you need your own group sort of thing?
Yeah. Yeah. Or when I say, when we have an International Women's Day and the boys go, well, where's our International Men's Day, right? Yeah. Well, yeah, I would like to hope at some point we don't have to call it an International Women's Day, right? We can just, I would love for the tagline, construction industry, to not be male dominated. I'd love to see a time in my life, a day in my lifetime where we simply talk about the construction industry. A lot of the times now when we're talking about actors or we're talking about elite sports people, we still have a separation between the men and the women, whether it's cricket or football or whoever it is, right? At some point, I really would love it to just be the construction industry.
Yeah.
So that's what I would love to see, is that tagline disappear.
So I think I've also seen AWIC has set an ambitious goal to increase female representation by 40%. Is it by 2040?
Yep.
So what is your roadmap to get there?
Look, just been really noisy, doing more roadshows with the students. And for me, I equate it to, whenever there's a new program at schools, whether it's, turning off the tap when you brush your teeth or a recycling program or whatever it is, right? The kids take it from school and they take it home. So, that's one way that we can start to get the message inclusive of parents. The other part of it is, and we talked about it just before, right? Slowly but surely shifting those perceptions that women don't belong in construction. Let's invite them. Let's open the door. Let's give them the casual, part-time, flexible work that they need. Because when we're all in a room together, it's a lot more cohesive and we have a lot more innovation if we're all in it. If we're all there together, right? And that goes for, having our young 15, or maybe not 15, but 17, 18, 19-year-olds in the boardroom, as well as our 60, 65, staff members. Everybody is bringing something different. And we have to stop also thinking about that next generation coming through being lazy and entitled and all of those things, right? They're our innovators. I'm pretty sure at some point early in my career, I would have got called all of those things too, right? We want to see change and we need to let them navigate that for us. It's like giving somebody a recipe or an article you've written. Different people will perceive it differently. We have to start encouraging that.
Yeah. So do you ever see in Australia in particular, the UK government has set a target to raise female representation in construction by 25% by, I'm not sure if that's correct, 2025, I think I saw. But is there anything that's going on with the government in Australia that you're seeing they're helping to try and back these initiatives or anywhere else?
Yeah, look, there's been lots of funding from government around increasing women in trade, which it has done. But now we need to keep them there, right? We've engaged them. Now we need to provide the resources and the support to keep them in the industry. And some of that is looking at the wages. An apprentice is on very little money, $15, $16, $17 an hour. No one can afford to live on that type of thing unless they're living at home. And when you see initiatives come out, whether it's by government or others, and they're like, let's give them $5,000, but then you read the fine print, right? And it says only if they're not living at home. Well, who on a first-year apprenticeship salary can do that? So there's been some great initiatives. There is change happening. There's lots of great initiatives from private organisations as well. I'm waiting to see, there's some reports due in the next week or two from Construction Skills Queensland. It'll be interesting to see what their reporting says. Word on the street, has it that their figures for women entering and retention in construction has increased. It'll be interesting to see what that is. They won't tell me yet.
So how do you manage offering the support for women already in the industry versus trying to encourage new people into the industry, the youngsters? How do you balance that?
Look, every day is different. We have our targeted approach, with the roadshows. So that's one of the big ways that we do it with our schools. We also go to school career expos and those sorts of things, and it really is the community that is behind me supporting AWIC, whether it's fourth year apprentice carpenters that have like, yep, I struggled for X, Y, and Z reasons. I want to make sure that just one person doesn't have to have that struggle, right? So it's the community. It's the community banding together, whether they're, training organisations, individuals, business owners. If we can ask everybody to give 2 hours a month to attend an event or a school expo. The roadshows are a bit different. That's more of a long, a week-long commitment. But we have people that put it in their calendar, right? We have them when we work, they're wanting to know what dates we're going to do for 2026. It's a bit scary because I need to get through the 2025 roadshow first. But by having that calendar, they take the time off, or they allocate that time in their business where they're going to, come on the road with us. And that's incredibly powerful too, right? Because everybody has a story. I don't know a single woman in the industry, and I'm more than happy for them to connect me if I'm wrong, that woke up on a Wednesday and went, yes, let's get into construction, right? Most of us fell into it or organically arrived there, right? I don't know about yourself, but I know I didn't wake up on a Wednesday or a Thursday and go, yes, let's get into construction, right? It was an organic approach, and it somewhat called me to it, right? So yeah, we've all got a story. We all need to be a little bit more vocal in sharing that story. Some of our members are qualified chefs who started to sell appliances, and next minute, they're working for international supply chains and, being the number one salesperson in Australia. So there's some really, and we need to share those stories, because I think, students, but also their parents and guardians want to see that longevity, in their daughter or son coming into the construction industry.
So you've mentioned the road shows a lot. What does this actually involve? So did you say, is this what starts this weekend that you're?
So in 4 days time, we're on the road for 15 days. So we'll travel probably nearly 15,000 kilometres over that time frame. And for those listening in Queensland, Australia, we'll head from Brisbane, we'll drive up to Rockhampton, we'll spend a week in Rockhampton, Yeppoon, the surrounding areas. And then we drive back to Brisbane and we fly to Cairns the next day, and we spend a week in North Queensland. There's a mixture of visiting, sites and industry, like I mentioned before, but there's also the opportunity to go and visit primary schools and high schools who, may not have the teacher resources, so we take the activities to them. And it's all about having a conversation. It sounds simple, right? But that's where we start.
That must take a lot of planning. Does that happen every year then?
Well, some years are bigger than others. It depends on funding, right? We can't do it without support from the industry. Sometimes it's a grant. This year we were fortunate to get some grant funding, which has helped us do a longer and more intensive roadshow. Other years we just, go to one location because that's what the budget affords, right? But yeah, so we rely heavily on sponsorship support. Even in kind, something as simple as fuel vouchers helps us drive to the next place, right? So yeah, it does depend each year on the support, but we're third year in now, and there's a lot of regular sponsors for the roadshow because they can see the change, or at least the conversations that we're having, right? Particularly when they come along on those tours with us.
I'm sure those fuel vouchers come in very handy. Australia is a very big place. So big around. Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've really touched on this yet, actually. You guys are a big advocate against discrimination in the construction industry, but what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen some women face in the industry, and how do you help them tackle those?
Look, I think there's something different every day. Sometimes it's, not understanding what a construction site might look like, or even what a role may look like. when students or women entering, even the guys are entering the construction industry, they watch building programs on TV, The Block, or those types of shows, right? And they only see a small percentage of what that role completely entails. Having a teacher call and, say that the young lady was on work experience as a plumber. It was raining and she had to dig a trench. Well, my first question was, where were the rest of the team? And they were digging the trench with her, right? That's the job of a plumber. Now, there was no electrical lightning, or she wasn't going to be injured. She was just going to get wet. But the team was there with her. Now, if the team would have been undercover poking fun at her, that's a completely different conversation. And I think sometimes there's those barriers where we haven't completely explained what the role entails. And that's, that's for us to get better at. And look, sometimes it's as simple as being overlooked for a job, and I say it's as simple as, but it happens. When you don't get a role because you're of childbearing years, or you're newly married and the boss thinks that you're going to have a couple of kids, they don't see that necessarily as a bonus and as an advantage to the organization. And that's disappointing, because that person, has a skill set that they could most likely do more with.
Yeah. And I think from your experience as well, what are the biggest challenges women face when they're actually already in the industry? Why do they start to tend to leave as well, from what you've seen?
Look, I think that isolation is a big one. You can be working in a massive organisation but still feel alone, particularly like we said earlier in the podcast, where if you're the only female in an engineering company or in that department, right, in a drafting department, in a marketing department, wherever that is, if you're the only female and or male in that department, it can feel isolating. The other thing is that there is a shift in, and I believe we have our young generation coming through where they're not putting up with rubbish. They're not going to do the 60 hours a week until you give me the promotion. And even then, they're probably still not going to do it, right? This is my hours. This is what you pay me for. This is what I'm going to give you. Whereas I'll put my hand up. I grew up with the, school of hard knocks, and you had to give more, or you were expected to give more, right? But at some point, you can't give anymore. So I think it's really good that we are starting to see a shift in that, even when COVID was a great opportunity for us to not go to work when we're really, really sick. Stay home, get better, spend a few days at home, and then go to work. You still might not be feeling 100%, but you're also not then sharing it throughout the rest of the organisation.
Yeah. I think that's something we've seen quite a lot here as well, that the younger generation are positively impacting that. And as you say, I've sort of grown up in that sort of mentality as well. Just even if you've got a bit of a sniffle, go in, show your face. But no, it's changing a lot, and it's good.
Well, I think it's great. Yeah, great from involved aspects, but particularly our mental health.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, I still haven't. And if somebody's got the recipe, the work-life balance, I don't know that. I still think it's a bit of a unicorn. But, not doing the 60 hours a week at work and then coming home and, being disconnected with our family has to be a really good start to that.
Sure. And I guess, do you genuinely believe, from what you're seeing out on the road, do you think that the industry is ready to start breaking down these barriers? What do you honestly think from what you've been seeing lately?
Look, there's yes and no. Some places are doing it brilliantly, right? Some organisations are absolutely empowering women, but, their staff as a whole, they're internally promoting, they're, working on their paternity leave. Their paternity leave is available for the men as it is for the women. And I think there's some of the shifts that have been, for me, really exciting to see, because, we can have all of this change, but we don't want to leave anybody behind either.
Yeah.
So I think some of those things are great. Organisations, when I hear them talk about, they stopped and assessed what they were doing internally before they went and shouted out from the rooftops what they're doing well. Having multicultural days, having all of these sorts of things, right? Where they're including that diversity. It's easy to say that we're a diverse and inclusive workplace, tick a box and put it in the top drawer, right? But when you invite yeah, we can have all the great words we want, but but when you invite your team members to come in and have a day, it doesn't matter which group it is, but to have a day where you celebrate the national dress, where you cook the meals at home and bring them in for your team to share with you. That's a community aspect, right? And it is really, really good to see not just big businesses do it, but small businesses do it. And even something as simple as people getting paid to have their birthday off.
Yeah, no, that would make a big difference for sure.
It's huge, right? Yeah.
That actually leads on to my next question. So I was going to ask, what does AWIC address beyond gender? So as you said, sort of supporting people from different cultural or socio-economic backgrounds too.
Absolutely. Helping those that are, I'm going to say, less fortunate, that socioeconomic background that you were talking about, like something as simple as being able to organise for a student, doesn't matter their age or gender, but a basic toolkit, or a pair of psych boots. It doesn't matter who you buy a pair of construction, psych boots from in Australia, they're $250. That's a lot of money when you're a first-year apprentice or a first-day apprentice, right? And not every family has the ability to support that. And something like that, we just ask them to pay it forward, and it does happen. So sometimes it's the small things that make the biggest impact.
Yeah, excellent. And then I guess another thing is role models and visibility matter obviously quite a lot in non-traditional industries. So what advice would you give to any young women thinking about getting into construction today?
Ask the question. Ask your dad. Generally, we find out any of the young ladies that apply for our awards or anybody around us, they have a male role model, right? Whether it's their dad who's in industry, an uncle, a brother, somebody like that, right? They will know someone you can talk to. And if they don't, they can give us a call and we can connect them with somebody. And sometimes that 30-minute conversation is all they need to go, yes, that's for me, or no, that's not for me. And I think we have to celebrate the no as well, because we don't want them to start an apprenticeship and a 40-year journey knowing they don't like it.
Yeah.
That's just as powering to know what they don't want to do as to what they do want to do, and we need to be encouraging that.
I feel like I also know a lot of people, we get a lot of people that are keen to study architecture, for instance. But how do we also try to adapt that to show them, okay, architecture is just one side of it. What about all the rest of it that comes? How can we not make it sound more exciting, but yeah.
Yeah, but unfortunately we do, right? We need to sell the dream as such, or sell the role, or sell the longevity, And, for me, when I started estimating, it was something as simple as knowing that the plan on the piece of paper that I was holding in front of me was somebody's dream. And I played a small part in making that dream a reality, right? I ordered the materials and labor. I'm just one tiny cog in the wheel, but you are still a relevant and important cog. And I think some of that messaging we need to be sharing too. And whether it's architecture or engineering or interior design or trades, everybody has a role to play. And if you take that one person out, it all falls apart.
You can't do it without one of them. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So for listeners who are interested in perhaps joining AWIC, how do your sort of membership levels work, and what benefits do members actually get?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of different membership levels. There's one as an individual, a small business for where you can have up to 3 of your team members, or we have larger corporate sponsorships. So they're available on our website, awic.org.au, and gives you access to a fabulous members portal that we're continually updating. So there's all sorts of information in there, and some of it may not be relevant to you today, but it might be tomorrow. Whether it's updating your resume, I know for the first 15 years of my career, I didn't apply for a job. So when I had to sit down and write a resume, I had to think, what's current, what's relevant, what do I put on it these days, right? Interview skills and, hints and tips about dressing for the job we want rather than the job we have. But also a lot of, professional development, some webinars, some of them are 8 minutes, some of them are 18 minutes, but there's this great portal in there with lots and lots of resources available for them.
Excellent. And I think you've answered my next question. So what practical support do you actually offer members? But we just had that. And I guess finally, are there any, I've just heard about your roadshow, but any other sort of upcoming events, conferences, or other ways for our listeners to connect with AWIC and just learn more about the industry?
We've got our awards coming up in October, so nominations closed on Friday. But if you want to come along, everybody is welcome. And there's a couple of more events this year that we'll be having. And then in March, we'll have our International Women's Day event. This will be our 9th year. Last year we had over 500 people attend. It was just phenomenal. And I love that we've probably got, a couple of years ago, we'd have had 30% men. We're probably nudging that 40%. And it's just great to see corporate Australia buying multiple tables and bringing their team to celebrate their success.
So you actually have a physical event for that?
Physical event for that, yeah.
So do people at that event, just interestingly, do people come and sort of share their success stories? How does that kind of work?
It's a massive networking opportunity, right? I mean, we might have registrations open at 11 o'clock. People are turning up at 10 because they know that it's an opportunity to catch up with people they haven't seen for a while, right? And with, there's been some hard work there, but it's now a date on the calendar. In the early days, people would come, they'd, rush out the door at 2 or 2:30 to get back to work. These days, there's no rushing back to work, right? People are there to catch up with industry, to connect, they generally will hang around afterwards, and just literally, catch up with everybody and meet new people, right? If I've put 500 people in a room and you don't walk away with 3 new contacts, I'm not sure what else I can do for you.
Amazing. No, that sounds great. And we look forward to seeing what else you guys get up to. I think that's all we have time for today, but is there anything else you would like to add before we finish up, Amanda?
No, it's been a great conversation with you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. We look forward to watching you guys.